The little boy was holding my husband's hand when he saw me across the hospital hallway and smiled. He could not have been older than 6. He had my husband's eyes, the same dark lashes, the same small crease near the mouth when he was nervous. And when the boy looked up and said, "Dad, is that the lady from the picture?" I forgot how to breathe. My husband Daniel turned so fast his coffee splashed onto his wrist. His face lost all colour. A woman standing beside him, a pretty brunette in a beige coat, froze with her hand on the boy's shoulder. And in that one terrible second, with fluorescent lights buzzing above us and the smell of antiseptic in the air, I understood something that made my knees feel weak. My husband had another family, but even then, even with that child staring at me and Daniel looking like a man caught inside a burning house, I still did not know the worst part. I still did not know why there was a picture of me in that little boy's hand. And I still did not know why the woman beside my husband whispered, "She was never supposed to find you here." The truth is, this moment did not begin in that hospital hallway. It began 5 years earlier when I met Daniel on a rainy Thursday and thought I had found the safest kind of love. I was 36 then, working as a bookkeeper for a small roofing company. My life was quiet, not empty, just careful. I had spent years building something stable after a childhood full of loud arguments, unpaid bills, and promises that broke like glass. I liked clean kitchens, folded towels, and people who said what they meant. Daniel seemed like that kind of person. He was calm, steady, the sort of man who held doors open without making a show of it. He remembered small things, how I hated olives, how I always reached for the blue mug in my cabinet, how I checked the stove twice before bed. When we first started dating, he told me, "I know life can be hard. I don't want to make yours harder." And I believed him. He worked in logistics, or at least that was what he said. His hours were strange sometimes, but not impossible. Early shipments, late calls, weekend site visits, grown-up work with grown-up explanations. Nothing dramatic, nothing that should have frightened me. When we got married, I felt relief more than fireworks. And I do not mean that in a sad way. Relief can be holy when you have spent your life bracing for impact. Daniel was gentle. He brought me soup when I was sick, rubbed my shoulders when I worked too late, kissed my forehead every morning like it was a promise. For the first year, we were happy in a quiet, ordinary way. We rented a small house with cream walls and a cracked back step. We argued about paint colors and laughed about the neighbor's cat that kept sneaking into our garage. Sometimes at night, Daniel would fall asleep with one hand on my ankle like he needed to know I was still there. That is why what happened later hurt the way it did. Betrayal is one thing. Betrayal from someone who made you feel safe is another. The first sign was so small I almost feel foolish saying it now. A receipt in his jeans pocket, not for flowers or jewelry or a hotel, for a children's shoe store. I found it while doing laundry on a Sunday. Tiny sneakers, size 1. I remember holding the slip between 2 fingers and smiling to myself at first because I assumed it was for a co-worker's baby shower or a niece I had forgotten. When Daniel came home, I asked lightly, "Whose little shoes did you buy?" He stopped with his keys still in his hand, then he laughed. "Oh, those. My manager asked me to pick them up. His wife had a work emergency." It was a normal enough answer. Maybe too normal. But marriage teaches you something dangerous. It teaches you how to accept a story when you want peace more than truth. A week later, I saw a crayon mark in the back seat of Daniel's car, bright green, curved like a child's hand had slipped while drawing. We did not have children. No nieces had visited. No family with toddlers. I touched the line with my thumb and felt something cold move through me. That night I asked him, "Did someone have their kid in your car?" He did not look up from his plate. One of the guys from the warehouse, his sitter, bailed. It was always an answer, always quick, always ordinary, just enough to make me feel rude for asking. Then came the phone. Daniel already had a work phone, but one Tuesday night at nearly midnight, his real phone buzzed on the bathroom counter while he was outside taking out the trash. A message lit up the screen. It only said 3 words. "She keeps asking. No name." Just a number. My stomach tightened. I stood there looking at those words while the bathroom fan hummed above me. When Daniel came back inside and saw me holding the phone, something sharp flashed through his face before he covered it. "Who's asking?" I said. He took the phone too quickly. "A dispatcher. One of the drivers keeps calling about a schedule change." I stared at him. A dispatcher text like that at midnight. He rubbed the back of his neck. "People in my job have weird hours." I wanted to push harder. I wanted to say the sentence forming in my throat. "Then why do you look scared?" But I did what too many women do when they still love the person in front of them. I let his explanation sit there like a bad smell and pretended not to notice. After that, the strange details multiplied. He started taking calls outside more often. He turned his phone face down. He became protective of random stretches of time that used to mean nothing. A 2-hour gap on Saturday, a late stop after work, a sudden helping a friend. And what bothered me most was not just the absences, it was the way he came back from them. Tired, yes, but emotionally full, like he had been somewhere that mattered. One Friday evening, I was wiping the kitchen counter when I noticed a folded construction paper card peeking out of his work bag. It had a crooked red heart on the front and glitter stuck to the edges. Inside, in uneven handwriting, it said, "Thank you for coming to my school. Love you." No name. Just a child's drawing of 3 people holding hands. I sat down so hard the chair scraped the floor. When Daniel walked in and saw the card on the table, he went still. Really still. The kind of stillness that tells the truth before the mouth does. Then he picked it up and said quietly, "I can explain." But he did not explain. He said it belonged to a co-worker's kid. He said he had covered for a dad who got stuck out of town. He said the child got attached because he had shown up a few times to help. He said it in a tired voice, like I was burdening him by making him repeat something simple. And that was when I began to feel the most dangerous kind of doubt. Not doubt about him, doubt about myself. Maybe I was too suspicious. Maybe I was becoming the kind of wife who sees shadows everywhere. Maybe I was creating poison where none existed. I hated that feeling. It made me quiet. It made me watch instead of act. Then one night, I heard him say a name in his sleep. Sammy. Not mine. Not anyone in our family. Just that soft whispered name with pain tucked inside it. I lay there in the dark listening to my husband's breathing change, and I knew deep in my bones that whatever he was hiding had roots. The next morning I asked, "Who is Sammy?" Daniel's coffee cup paused halfway to his mouth. "No one. You said it in your sleep." He forced a laugh. "Maybe from a dream." I kept looking at him. "Do you know a Sammy?" His eyes lifted to mine then, calm. Too calm. "No." That lie landed differently, because this time I knew it was a lie. Not suspected, knew. And once you know one lie for sure, the rest of the marriage starts to sound different. I began checking things I had never checked before. Credit card statements, toll charges, fuel purchases. I was not proud of it, but pride was losing to fear. That was when I found a pattern. Every other Thursday, around 6:30 p.m., Daniel's card showed a small grocery store charge in a neighborhood 40 minutes away. Not near his office. Not near any client location he had ever mentioned. Always the same store, always around the same amount. Milk, bread, fruit maybe. Family groceries. I told myself not to jump to conclusions, then I made the drive. The neighborhood was quiet and clean with low brick houses and bikes left on lawns. I parked near the grocery store and waited in my car with my hands wrapped around the steering wheel so tightly they hurt. At 6:41, Daniel's truck pulled into the lot. I felt my chest go hollow. He went inside, came out with 2 paper bags. And then he drove 3 streets over to a pale yellow house with blue shutters. I watched him carry the bags to the door like he had done it 100 times. Watched the door open before he knocked. Watched a little boy launch himself at Daniel's legs. Daniel dropped the bags just enough to catch him. I could not hear what they said. I did not need to. The woman appeared a second later, smiling in the doorway with the easy smile of somebody greeting someone expected. Not a surprise guest. Not a friend. Home. My mouth filled with that terrible metallic taste fear brings. I sat frozen behind the wheel while the evening sun made everything look soft and harmless. A sprinkler ticked across the grass. A dog barked in the distance. Somewhere a wind chime moved. I remember thinking, the world should not look this normal while my life is breaking. I did not storm up to the house. I did not scream. I did not even cry at first. I drove home because I needed to breathe somewhere the walls knew my name. Then I sat on the kitchen floor until it got dark. When Daniel came home, he kissed my head and said, "Sorry, traffic was terrible." I looked up at him from the table where I had laid out the receipt, the card, and a printed photo I had taken on my phone of him holding that child in the driveway. His face changed so completely it was like watching one man die and another appear. I said only one sentence. "How long have you had another family?" He stared at the photo. Then he sank into a chair and covered his face with both hands. That should have been the moment the whole truth came out. It was not. It was only the first door opening. At first he cried. Real tears, the kind that make your nose red and your voice shake. He said he was sorry. He said it started before we met. He said the woman, her name was Claire, had gotten pregnant during a rough time in his life. He said he tried to do the right thing. He said he never stopped supporting the child. He said he never meant for things to become what they became. I listened without moving. Then I asked the question that mattered. "Are you married to her?" He hesitated. My whole body went cold. "Daniel, are you married to her?" he whispered. "Not legally. Not legally." Those two words were like stepping on rotten wood. Not legal means there is still a bridge beneath you somewhere. Except there was not. It only meant the truth was worse in a different direction. He told me Claire knew about me. He told me she believed he and I had separated months ago. He told me he had been trying to untangle things. He said he stayed because he loved me. He said he stayed there because of the boy. I looked at him and thought, love should not require this much lying to survive. I asked, "Does he call you Dad?" Daniel closed his eyes. "Yes." "And the picture," I said. "Why was there a picture of me?" His face tightened. "Claire found one online. She asked questions. I told her you were someone from work, someone causing trouble." For a second I actually laughed. It was a dry, broken sound. "Causing trouble? I am your wife." He started crying harder then, reaching for my hand. I pulled it away. That night, I packed a bag and went to my sister Naomi's apartment. On the drive there, my hands shook so badly I missed a turn. Naomi opened the door, took one look at my face, and said nothing. She just wrapped her arms around me and held on. For 3 days, I did not answer Daniel's calls. Then on the 4th day, Claire called me. I do not know how she got my number. Maybe from one of Daniel's phones. Maybe from paperwork. Maybe because women who are lied to become detectives whether they want to or not. I almost let it ring out. Then I answered. Her voice was tired, not angry. "I think we're both being lied to." I sat down slowly on Naomi's couch. "You think?" There was a long pause. Then she said something I did not expect. "I didn't know you were still living with him. He told me you were unstable. He said you refused to sign divorce papers because you were obsessed with him." My stomach turned. It was such a cruel, useful lie. The kind a practice man tells because it protects him from both directions. I said, "We are not divorced. We were married 3 years ago." Claire sucked in a breath like I had hit her. Then she whispered, "Oh my God." We met the next morning at a diner halfway between our neighborhoods. I had expected to hate her, maybe blame her, maybe see something smug or cold in her face. Instead, I saw a woman who looked as wrecked as I felt. Claire was younger than me by maybe 5 years. Pretty, yes, but worn down around the eyes. She brought the boy, Sammy, because she could not get a sitter. When he looked at me, he smiled politely and went back to coloring on the kids' menu. He was innocent in the most painful way. Claire told me she met Daniel 8 years earlier under a different last name. I stopped stirring my coffee. Different how? She swallowed. He wasn't Daniel Cross when I met him. He was Daniel Hale. I felt the room tilt a little. He changed his name? She nodded. He said he did it after his father died. He said he wanted distance from his family. That should have been enough horror for one story, a husband with another family and another name. I thought that was the worst part. I was wrong. Claire reached into her purse and slid a folded document across the table. I found this in his storage box after he left last night. It was a birth certificate. My hands started shaking before I even finished reading it. Father's name, Daniel Hale. Mother's name, Claire Benton. Child's name, Samuel Hale. Date of birth, 4 years ago. 4 years ago. A year after Daniel and I got married, I stared at the paper so long the letters started to blur. Claire was watching me carefully. He told me, she said softly, that you were his ex, that the marriage had already ended by then. I looked up. He was living in my house, wearing a ring, sleeping in my bed. Claire closed her eyes. Sammy looked between us and whispered, "Mom." She smiled too fast. "It's okay, baby. Keep coloring." But it was not okay. It was no longer an affair story. It was a second child conceived during my marriage. A second life built while Daniel kissed me goodnight. That was the moment I thought I had hit bottom. Then Claire said, "There's one more thing." I did not want one more thing. My heart already felt skinned raw. But she reached into her purse again and handed me a photograph. Old, slightly bent. A group picture in front of a large house. 2 older people seated in the center. Several adults standing behind them. One of them was Daniel, younger, thinner, no beard. Beside him stood a woman who looked so much like me that my stomach dropped. I stared at the face. Same dark hair. Same nose. Same chin. Not identical, but enough to make me grip the edge of the table. "Who is that?" I whispered. Claire's mouth trembled. "His sister, Rebecca. She died years ago." Something cold moved through me. I looked again. It was not just resemblance. It was style, too, the way she wore her hair, the plain clothes, the careful smile. And then all at once I remembered little remarks Daniel had made when we were dating. "You look beautiful with your hair down. I like you in blue. Don't wear too much makeup. You look better natural." Small preferences. Husband preferences. Except now they did not feel small. They felt arranged. I said very slowly, "Why are you showing me this?" Claire's eyes filled with tears. "Because I think he picked both of us for a reason." I could not speak. She leaned in and lowered her voice. "I started digging after I found out about you. His old name led me to an obituary. His sister Rebecca died in a car accident when she was 27. And then I found something else, a lawsuit. The diner sounds faded, forks against plates, coffee being poured, a child laughing in another booth. All of it went far away." Claire whispered, "His family was rich, very rich, old money. Rebecca was supposed to inherit most of it. But after she died, the estate got complicated. Their parents died within 2 years. Daniel fought with other relatives over the trust." I stared at her. "What does that have to do with me?" Claire gave a small, broken laugh. "That's what I asked. Then I found the trust language." My throat tightened. "What language?" She took out one last paper, this one copied from some legal file. I did not understand all of it. Legal words layered like locked doors. But one part was highlighted. "In the absence of Rebecca Hale or lawful issue born to her, distribution may transfer to designated familial successor, provided said successor establishes and maintains a stable household mirroring the family line and approved image standards." I frowned. What does that even mean? Claire looked sick when she answered. "I think it means Daniel needed to present a certain kind of family to unlock the money. A wife who looked like Rebecca. A child. Stability. Respectability. An image." I felt the blood leave my face. "No," I said instantly, "because some truths hit so hard your body refuses them first. No." Claire's voice cracked. "I think he used me for the child, and I think he used you for the image." I looked at Sammy bent over his crayons, his small hand moving in careful circles. Then I looked at the photo again. Daniel's dead sister, a woman who looked enough like me to make my skin crawl. Suddenly my whole marriage rearranged itself in my head. The blue dresses he liked, the natural hair, the way he once said on our honeymoon, almost absently, "You have such a calming face." The house he wanted. The family photos he insisted on taking, even when I felt tired. The way he framed our life like a brochure. The way he sometimes stared at me not with love, but with evaluation, as if checking whether I still fit the role. I pushed my plate away so hard it rattled. Claire whispered, "I think the other family was not even the real secret." She was right. The real secret was that neither of us had been fully loved. We had been used, arranged, built into a picture for money. I wish I could say I stayed calm after that. I did not. I went to Daniel's office. I went there with the photograph of Rebecca in my bag, and the trust copy folded in my coat pocket, and so much rage in my chest, I felt it in my teeth. His assistant said he was in a meeting. I walked past her. Daniel stood when he saw me. "What are you doing here?" I shut the door behind me and threw Rebecca's photograph onto his desk. For the first time since this nightmare began, I watched pure fear take over his face. I said, "Who is she?" He looked at the photo and did not answer. I stepped closer. "Don't lie to me. Not one more time." His voice came out low. "Where did you get that?" I laughed once, sharp. "That is what you ask me, not how I am, not what this has done to me." "You ask where I got it?" He sat down slowly like his legs had weakened. "You don't understand. That sentence, those 4 cowardly words, men say them when they have run out of prettier lies." I leaned over his desk and said, "Then explain it in simple words." He covered his mouth. Then he said something that made my skin go cold. "I never meant for it to become this." This, as if my marriage were a scheduling error. I stared at him. "Did you marry me because I look like your dead sister?" He flinched hard enough to be answer enough. I actually stepped back. He stood suddenly. "It was not like that at first." "Then what was it like?" His voice cracked. "At first I did love you. At first, I thought my heart had already broken, but there are fresh places to split when somebody says the cruel truth without even realizing it." I whispered, "At first?" He started talking fast then, the way guilty people do when they know the wall is coming. He said the trust had conditions. He said his uncle controlled distributions. He said he was drowning in debt after legal fights. He said Rebecca had always been the favorite, and everything in that family had been built around preserving a certain image. He said when he met me, the resemblance shocked him. He said it opened a door in his mind. I wanted to scream. Instead, I stood very still and let him bury himself. He admitted he had presented our marriage to trustees as proof of stability. He admitted he needed family photos, a respectable home, and eventually a child. When I struggled with fertility and our appointments kept ending in bad news, he began panicking. I whispered, "So you found Claire?" His eyes filled with tears. "I already knew Claire. Did you get her pregnant on purpose?" He did not answer fast enough. My hand flew before I planned it. The slap cracked across that office so loud his assistant gasped outside the door. "I do not regret it." He held his cheek and stared at me like I had shocked him. I said, "You were going to use her child as yours, use me as your wife, and use a dead woman as a blueprint. What kind of man are you?" He whispered, "I was trying to survive." "No," I said. "You were trying to win." He looked down then, and in that moment I saw him clearly, not as a husband, not as a broken man, as a person who believed other people's lives could be moved around like furniture if the prize was big enough. I left shaking so hard I had to sit in my car for 20 minutes before I could drive. That should have been the confrontation that ended it. But Daniel still had one weapon left: public humiliation. A week later, his family held a memorial gala for one of their charities. I had never attended before because Daniel always said those events were complicated. Now I knew why. Claire called me that afternoon and said, "He's presenting the family case tonight. I think he's going to introduce Sammy publicly." My fingers went numb around the phone. If he did that first, if he spun the story before the truth came out, he could frame me as the unstable wife, Claire as the grieving partner, himself as the man trying to protect a child. Men like Daniel do not only lie, they stage. So I went. The ballroom was all glass chandeliers and white tablecloths. Wealth has a smell: flowers, wax, old wood, expensive perfume. The kind of air that makes ordinary people feel like they should speak softly. I walked in wearing navy because Rebecca was often photographed in pale blue, and for the first time in my life I wanted Daniel to see I was no longer standing inside the shape he had chosen for me. People stared. I did not care. At the front of the room, Daniel stood near the podium in a black suit, talking to an older man with silver hair. I guessed was the trustee uncle. Claire was there too, pale and tense, Sammy at her side in a little blazer. My heart twisted for that boy because none of this was his fault. Daniel saw me and went white. He came toward me fast. "You need to leave." I smiled without warmth. "That sounds familiar." His voice dropped. "Do not do this here." I said quietly, "That depends." "Are you planning to lie about me on a microphone?" His jaw tightened. "You don't understand what this family can do." There it was again, not apology, threat. I leaned in and said, "You should be more worried about what I can do." The event began before he could answer. Speeches, applause, clinking glasses. Then Daniel was invited to the podium to say a few words about legacy, family, and the future of the foundation. Legacy, family, future. I thought I might choke on the hypocrisy. He started smoothly, too smoothly, thanking donors, honoring tradition. Then his voice shifted into something more personal. "There are moments," he said, smiling into the lights, "when a family must endure private difficulties with dignity, when false narratives threaten innocent people, when protecting a child matters more than protecting appearances." A hush spread through the room. My hands went cold. He continued, "I have stayed silent out of respect. But tonight I will not allow a disturbed woman to threaten my son or the mother of my child." Several people turned to look at me. There are humiliations that sting. Then there are humiliations designed like knives. This was the second kind. He was doing it, publicly, calmly, making me into the unstable problem while standing under a charity banner. Claire stood frozen near the back, horror on her face. Sammy clutched her hand. The uncle trustee looked stern but interested, not shocked, which told me something important. Daniel had prepared this story. Then Daniel said the line that made the room spin. "I married someone I tried to help, someone fragile, someone who became obsessed when she could not accept that our life together had ended." A few people murmured. My ears rang. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it. And that was when I stood up. I did not ask permission. I did not wait. I walked straight toward the stage, heels clicking across the ballroom, and said in a voice louder than his microphone, "Tell them why you chose me." The room went silent. Daniel's face drained of color. He took one step back from the podium. I climbed the steps and looked him straight in the eyes. "Go on. Tell them about Rebecca. If fear has a smell, I swear I could smell it on him then." The older trustee stood abruptly. "What is this?" I turned toward the room, toward all the polished faces and folded napkins and expensive silence, and I said, "This man did not just cheat on me. He built 2 women into a lie." Gasps moved through the ballroom. Daniel reached for my arm. I pulled away. "Do not touch me." Then I took the microphone from its stand, and for one terrible, perfect second, I understood exactly how much power lives inside a plain voice telling the truth. I said, "My husband told one woman I was his unstable ex. He told me she was nothing serious. He fathered a child during our marriage. But that is not the worst part. The worst part is why." Nobody moved. Even the waiters had stopped. I held up the photograph of Rebecca. "This is Daniel's sister," I said. "She died years ago. I did not know she existed when I married him. What I also did not know is that his family trust required a certain image to release money. A stable household. A wife who fit the family line. A child." The uncle's face changed fast. Not confusion. Recognition. I saw it and knew I had struck the right nerve. Daniel whispered, "Stop." I looked at him. "You stopped being allowed to ask me for anything." Then I turned back to the room. He chose me because I looked enough like her to pass. And when I could not give him a child, he kept another woman and another child hidden to complete the picture. The ballroom erupted. Not loudly at first. Just sharp inhales, urgent whispers, chairs shifting. Then Claire, trembling but steady, stepped forward with Sammy and said, "It's true." Daniel spun toward her like he had been shot. Claire's voice broke, but she kept going. "He lied to both of us. He used both of us. And he used my son." That was the moment the polished room finally cracked. The uncle demanded papers. Daniel tried to speak over me. People began filming. Someone shouted for security, though nobody even seemed sure who security was supposed to remove. Daniel reached for the microphone again and hissed, "You are ruining everything." I stared at him and said the truest sentence I had spoken in months. "No, I am ending it." But the final horror had not arrived yet. I thought exposing the trust scam was the deepest layer. I was wrong again, because, after the gala, after the shouting and the trustee pulling Daniel into a side room and Claire crying in the parking lot, I got a call from Daniel's aunt 2 days later. Her voice was thin and tired. "There is something Rebecca told me before she died," she said. "Something I should have said earlier. I met her in a quiet tea shop the next morning. She was elegant in the brittle way older wealthy women sometimes are, every movement controlled, but her hands shook as she lifted her cup. She looked at me for a long time and said, 'You do not only resemble Rebecca.'" A chill moved through me. "What do you mean?" She swallowed. "Your mother used to work for our family." I stared at her. I had never known my father. My mother had died when I was 23, and she had always been vague about parts of her early life. Embarrassed, maybe. Protective, maybe. There were years she seemed to fold away when I asked too much. Daniel's aunt said softly, "Your mother and Rebecca's father had an affair." I could not feel my fingers. She kept talking, but the room had gone strange around the edges. Teacups, soft music, people murmuring nearby. I could hear everything and nothing. She said my mother had been paid to disappear. She said there had been rumors of a child. She said Rebecca found out as an adult and was devastated. She said Daniel knew. I whispered, "No." Her eyes filled with tears. "I am sorry. I did not realize he had found you. I thought the resemblance was simply unfortunate. But when I saw you at the gala and heard what you said, I knew. He knew exactly who you were. My whole body went ice cold. That was the real truth. Worse than the affair. Worse than the second family. Worse than the second family." Daniel had not just chosen a woman who looked like his dead sister. He had found his own half-sister and married me anyway. Not because he accidentally fell in love and later made evil choices, because from the beginning my identity had been part of the plan. I remember standing so quickly my chair tipped backward. The aunt was crying now. I did not know how far he would go. I could barely speak. He knew I was blood. She nodded once. I stumbled out of that tea shop into bright sunlight that felt cruel. Cars moved. People walked. Somewhere someone was laughing, and I stood on the sidewalk with my hand over my mouth thinking, I married my brother. My husband knew, and he still touched me, slept beside me, built vows on top of something filthy and calculated and unforgivable. I threw up in a hedge outside a bank. There are pains you can describe, betrayal, grief, rage. Then there are pains so deep language falls apart. What Daniel had done was not just immoral, it was contaminating. It made memory itself feel dirty. Every anniversary dinner, every morning kiss, every whispered, "love you," became unbearable to remember. I went straight to the police, then to a lawyer, then to a doctor. I will not dress that part up. It was humiliating, necessary and humiliating. Statements, tests, questions asked in careful voices, dates I had to say out loud, things I wished had never happened made official on paper. But I did it because silence was no longer survival. Silence was rot. Daniel called me 31 times that night. I answered once. His voice was wrecked. "Please let me explain." I sat in my car outside the police station and said, "You knew." He started crying. I did not know for certain at first. At first again. I closed my eyes. "But you suspected," he whispered. "Yes." Before the wedding. A long silence. Then, yes. I felt something inside me become very still. Not healed, not calm, just finished. I said, "You are dead to me." He began saying my name over and over, desperate now, but I hung up because some men think pain entitles them to one more audience. The weeks after that were ugly and public. Wealthy families do not like scandal. They especially do not like scandal with evidence. My lawyer found enough documents to show Daniel had accessed sealed employment records connected to my mother years before we met. Claire handed over messages. The aunt made a formal statement. The trustee's uncle, suddenly eager to save the family name, cooperated faster than I expected. Daniel was not a mastermind in the end. He was something uglier and smaller, a man who believed money, image, and control mattered more than human lines that should never be crossed. Claire and I spoke often during that time, not because we became instant friends. Trauma does not turn into friendship that neatly. But we were tied by truth. We exchanged documents, compared dates, filled holes in each other's understanding. Sometimes we just sat on the phone in silence while Sammy played in the background, and both of us tried to remember how ordinary life was supposed to sound. One evening, Claire said quietly, "I keep thinking the affair was the betrayal, but now it feels almost small." I understood exactly what she meant, because once the real horror is revealed, earlier horrors shift shape. The second family had been a weapon. The true crime was the design of the whole thing. Daniel's arrest did not happen dramatically at dawn or in handcuffs on my lawn. It happened after paperwork, after evidence, after enough straight lines connected that even his family money could not blur them. Fraud, identity deception tied to trust filings, bigamy-related financial misrepresentation, and other charges my lawyer explained to me in careful words while I sat staring at the wall. When the investigators confirmed the blood relationship through records and testing, I had to excuse myself to the bathroom and lock the door just to breathe. No amount of justice makes a truth like that feel less poisonous, but justice matters anyway. The final time I saw Daniel was in a courthouse corridor months later. He looked smaller. Not physically, exactly, just emptied out. He started toward me like he still had the right. My lawyer stepped forward, but I shook my head. I wanted him to hear me once without interruption. He said, "I did love you." I looked at him for a long time. Then I said, "That is what makes you dangerous. You call possession love," he cried. I did not. I walked past him and felt, for the first time in a long time, that I was moving towards something instead of away. The legal ending was slow, but it came. The marriage was voided. The trust claim collapsed. Daniel lost what he had spent years trying to build. Claire received support for Sammy through channels that no longer gave Daniel room to hide behind confusion. The family foundation quietly removed his name from everything. People who once praised his composure now spoke of him in lowered voices. But the most important ending was smaller. It happened one afternoon on my back porch months later. The same porch where I had once watered herbs and waited for a husband who was living two lives. Claire was there with Sammy. He was older somehow in the way children become older after adults make messes around them. He sat on the steps drawing with chalk. At one point he looked up at me and asked, "Are you still sad?" Children do that. They step right through all the layers and ask the bare thing. I smiled softly and said, "Sometimes." He nodded like that made sense. Then he held up his drawing. It was a house, a son, 3 stick figures, not 4, no father. Claire looked embarrassed, but I did not. I looked at that simple little picture and thought maybe the cleanest truths do not need many lines. After they left, I sat alone until sunset. The air smelled like cut grass. A dog barked down the block. Somewhere a screen door slammed. Ordinary sounds. Safe sounds. And I thought about how evil had entered my life wearing gentleness, how I had mistaken calm for character, how I had ignored my own instincts because I wanted peace so badly. That is the lesson I carry now. Not that love is dangerous. Love is not the dangerous thing. The dangerous thing is when someone studies your hunger for safety and turns it into a doorway. I survived that. I survived the other family, the lies, the humiliation, and the truth so vile it tried to poison my own reflection. And what I know now is simple. The worst betrayal is not being cheated on. It is being used. But the best revenge is still what it has always been, not breaking. And I did not break.